Good morning, children. Today we are going to see chemistry, chapter 5, separation of substances. Okay. So what is the heading tells us? Separation of substances. What is meant by substances? Substances means materials or items. Any articles. Okay. So, we are going to learn in this chapter about how I am going to separate the materials. So, from where am I going to separate? What is the need for me to separate? How am I going to benefit by separating the materials? To all these questions, we would discuss in this chapter. Okay. So as I told, separation means you're going to remove a substance from two or more substances. So I cannot, if I have a pencil, only one pencil, can I separate anything from this? Not possible, right? I cannot do the activity of separating from one material. Whereas here I have a pen, a stick, a pencil and an eraser. If I wanted to separate from this group of materials any one material alone, it is possible for me to do, isn't it? So for separation to be done, I want a group of substances as the first criteria. Whenever something is in the group, only then I can remove a substance from it, and that process is called as separation. For example, open your stationery box. You would have pencil, scale, eraser, pen. If I ask you to separate all the blue color writing materials from it, will you be able to do it? Your ink pen, lead pen, all these are in blue color writing material. So I can separate it from that group. It is possible for me to do. Okay, so the first criteria for me to separate a material is that they should exist as a group, either two or more substances. Only then it is possible for me to remove one material from such a group. Okay, now, so what are we going to separate? In this chapter, the word substances means it relates to the material. What kind of material it is going to be? In chemistry, what type of material are we going to learn about? It is about the impurities and the mixtures. Okay, so what is meant by impurity? The word itself tells you. When I segregate it into impure, it is not in its pure state. Some kind of unwanted materials are present in it. Okay, the next is mixtures. So mixtures in the sense I'm going to mix two or more substances, something which is present as a group. Okay, so I'm going to separate the materials which exist in either of these states only, either as an impurity or as a mixture. From these groups only I am going to separate the substances. Okay, so the impurities, when I consider it the classification of impurities, it is again divided into two substances as pure substances and impure substances. This is the basis on which I have classified the substance. So if I consider the category of impurities, the substances are classified as pure substances and impure substances. So pure substances means you would have only one type of particle in it. Example, water, hydrogen and oxygen. They both are elements and gives us the water as a single state. A copper rod, iron rod, they are purely made up of only copper. So there is not a mixture of any other substances in this. Okay, whereas when you consider an impure substance, you would have more than one type of particles. Okay, so like your pond water, milk, Sambar preparation, you have learnt in your biology itself. It is not made up of one type of particle. You have a mixture or more than two or more substances in it to get prepared. Okay, so impurities means the unwanted particles present in it. So based on the impurities, I have classified the substances as pure substances and impure substances. Okay, the next classification is based on the mixtures. We saw that mixtures means they are present as two or more substances when they are mingled up together. Okay, so based on the mixtures, I am classifying the substance as homogeneous substances and heterogeneous substances. Homogeneous substances means the name itself tells you. Homo means it is always same. Hetero means they are different. Yes, so homo means it is made up of the same materials. Hetero means different. So it doesn't mean that they are made up of same material. They exist in the uniform composition. Uniform composition means of the same type of materials. Okay, that is what I have written here. See, same proportion of components. They exist in the same ratios. Okay, don't panic that ma'am is using new words that I cannot understand the meaning. Nothing is new here. Homogeneous means they are all made up of same amount or ratio of components or the particles. I can even tell it as particles. Okay, so you see the example. You have your coffee, lotion, blood, glue. So how do you prepare a coffee? What are the materials you want? You want milk, coffee powder and sugar. Right? So you are going to mix all these three to obtain a coffee in the same uniform ratio. So that is why it is called as homogeneous mixture. Whereas heterogeneous mixture means they are all different components and you are going to mix them in an uneven ratio. Here uniformity is maintained when you mix them. But here you will not maintain the uniformity. Instead, it is mixed in an uneven ratio. You have seen the rocks in sand. Right? Is it countable? No, right? It is in an uneven ratio. The cereals and milk when it is mixed. Oil and water, you cannot separate them. That is also a major difference which is easily identifiable is how will you separate a substance or identify a substance as homogeneous or heterogeneous is all the homogeneous mixtures are easily separable by our hand. That is physically they are separable. But heterogeneous mixtures are not easy to separate. Understood? So we are going to see in this chapter about pure substances, impure substances, homogeneous substances and heterogeneous substances. I hope by now you got an idea what does each and everything mean. Okay? Next, need for separation. What is the need to do the action of separating? What are we going to obtain by separating some kind of materials from a mixture? What is the use? So by separating, I can remove the unwanted particles. The impurities can be removed. I can group them based on certain criteria. I can obtain different components in usable pure form. Okay, so when I do separating of substances, I can identify which are all pure and impure and group them separately, and I can group them based on certain criteria. Okay, so now you are given some vegetables and fruits, nuts, oil items. Everything is mixed together and given to you. If they ask you to group them, you would classify them based on some criteria like Okay, first I will group all the flowers, all the fruits, all the vegetables separately. This is one idea. And the second idea can be I can group some materials as eatables, and which are all not eatables, I will group them separately. So I am keeping a certain criteria on which I group the materials. So this is the need for me to separate. Let us see about the methods for separation. How am I going to separate the substances? By now you got to know what are the substances we are going to separate and why are we separating? What is the use of separating? We got to know. And now let us see on what basis I'm going to separate. What are the methods I implement to separate them? Threshing, winnowing, hand picking, sieving, magnetic separation, decantation, sedimentation, filtration, evaporation, and sublimation. Okay, so in the next upcoming classes we are going to see in detail about each method of separation. Okay, so threshing, winnowing, hand picking and all already you have learnt in your biology. You would recall it in the next class once I teach. Thank you, children.